If you enjoy stories about rare coins, forgotten treasures, and the hidden history behind the money in your pocket, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. It's free, it helps the channel grow, and it ensures you never miss out on discoveries like the one we're about to explore today. Now, take a moment and think back to 1988. Maybe you remember where you were. Maybe it was a time when you were just starting out, raising a family, or building your career. The world was changing, politically, economically, even musically. But far away, in South Africa, something quite small yet remarkable was being struck in bronze. A humble 2 cents coined at first glance, it's nothing special. 2 cents, barely enough to buy a single sweet back then. But as every seasoned collector knows, it's not the face value that matters. It's the story, the rarity, and the craftsmanship that turn a common coin into a piece of living history. And this 1988 2 cents coin is a perfect example of that transformation. South Africa in the late 1980s was in a state of deep transition. The old order was slowly giving way to a new one. The country's mint, the South African Mint Company, had been producing coins for decades, each bearing not just the nation's currency, but a symbol of its soul. The 2 cents coin of 1988 was part of the second decimal series introduced in the 1960s. Made of bronze, weighing about 3.56 grams, and measuring 19 millimeters across, it was a small but sturdy coin. On one side, you'd find a beautiful springbok, the national symbol of grace, resilience, and freedom. On the other, the proud coat of arms of South Africa, surrounded by the name of the country in English and Afrikaans. The design itself told a story of heritage, unity, and the changing tides of a nation. But here's where things get interesting. Among the millions of these coins minted for circulation in 1988, a few were struck under unusual conditions. Some bore microscopic differences, tiny flaws in the die, minute changes in the lettering, or a slightly off-center strike. Others were part of limited proof sets produced for collectors. These proof coins were never meant to rattle around in pockets or cash drawers. They were minted with precision, polished dies, and extra care. Each one gleamed with a mirror-like surface, the bronze catching the light in a way ordinary coins never could. Now, for most people, these details would mean little. But for a collector, especially a collector who understands history, they mean everything. Because a rare variation or proof strike can turn a simple 2-cent coin into a fortune. Imagine this. You're going through an old drawer, maybe a box of keepsakes from your travels, or perhaps a collection handed down by your father or grandfather. You find this small coin marked 1988, 2 cents, South Africa. You pick it up, maybe just for nostalgia's sake, not realizing you're holding something worth far more than its weight in bronze. Over the years, collectors and numismatists began to notice the peculiar appeal of certain South African coins from the 1980s. The political climate, the shifts in minting technology, and the limited runs of high-quality proofs all combined to make some issues unexpectedly rare. The 1988 2 cents stands at the center of that story, a coin that represents a crossroads in both design and history. For the generation that lived through those years, this coin is a time capsule. It carries memories of change, uncertainty, and endurance. For collectors, it's a challenge. Finding one in pristine condition, untouched by time, is no easy task. Most circulated examples are worn, dull, or spotted with oxidation. But when a proof or mint condition specimen surfaces, especially one with a verified minting anomaly, it becomes something truly extraordinary. And the value? Well, that's where the story takes an incredible turn. Over the last decade, demand for rare South African coins has surged among international collectors. The global market, driven by historical interest and scarcity, has elevated coins that once seemed ordinary into coveted artifacts. Auction houses in London, New York, and Johannesburg have reported remarkable bids for well-preserved examples of the 1988 2 cents coin. Collectors in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s are especially drawn to pieces like this, not just for the potential profit, but for the connection they provide. It's not just about owning a coin. It's about holding a piece of history that mirrors your own lifetime. You've seen economies rise and fall, currencies change, and nations transform. That little coin, in its own quiet way, lived through it too. If you close your eyes, you can almost picture the mint workers in Pretoria, carefully feeding the blanks into the press, hearing the steady rhythm of the machinery striking bronze over and over. You can imagine the smell of metal, the faint heat of the furnaces, the precision with which each design was inspected. Those men and women probably never imagined that, decades later, one of those coins would become a treasure worth thousands of dollars. And here's the part that makes it all worthwhile for collectors who still believe in the thrill of the hunt. Among the few known examples of the 1988 South African 2-cent coin, one particular proof specimen, flawless, untouched, perfectly preserved, has recently been valued at a jaw-dropping sum. It's not a misprint, not a hoax, and not just wishful thinking. It's been authenticated, graded, and verified by professionals. When that coin went up for private sale, it stunned the numismatic world. The final assessed value? $23,900. That's right, $23,900 for a coin with a face value of 2 cents. So the next time you come across an old coin, don't be too quick to dismiss it. Check the date, look for the details, and handle it with care. History hides in the smallest of places. Sometimes, fortune does too. If you found this story inspiring, if it brought back a few memories of your own, or if it made you want to dust off that old coin collection in the drawer, then make sure you subscribe right now. Because there are many more stories like this waiting to be told. Stories of ordinary objects that became extraordinary treasures, and of people just like you who discovered them. After all, collecting isn't just about coins or currency. It's about the journey, the nostalgia, and the simple joy of finding meaning, and sometimes great value, in the things we thought we'd forgotten. So hold on to your memories, keep your eyes open, and who knows, maybe the next priceless treasure is already sitting in your pocket. Before we begin, if you're someone who enjoys rare finds, vintage coins, or hidden treasures from the past, hit that subscribe button now. This channel is built for collectors like you. Today, we're not just talking about a coin. We're stepping back in time to a moment frozen in bronze. You're going to want to stay until the end, because the value of what we're about to uncover might just surprise you. Take a moment. Think about the year 1969. The world was changing. A man had just walked on the moon. Music was transforming culture. And in the southern tip of Africa, a quiet revolution was also happening. A small coin, unnoticed by most, was being struck in the South African mint. Just 2 cents. That's it. But decades later, that tiny object would become a sought-after piece for collectors across the world. And you may just have it in your drawer, your old box of coins, or tucked away among your father's things. This is the story of the 1969 South Africa 2-cent coin. Now, I know what you're thinking. What could possibly be so interesting about a coin that once bought barely a piece of gum? But this coin is more than metal. It is memory. It is history. It is scarcity. And like all things forgotten, it has quietly grown in curiosity and, in some rare cases, value. Let me paint the picture. On the front of this coin, you'll see the profile of a man. Sharp nose, high collar, eyes set forward with purpose. That's Jan van Riebeeck, the Dutch colonial administrator. His image appeared on South African coins for years. To the untrained eye, just another old portrait. But to those who know, it's a symbol of origins, of legacy, of deep and sometimes controversial history. His face marks the beginning of the colonial settlement in the Cape. This coin, in your palm, carries that story forward. Turn it over, and you'll find something powerful, an animal in motion. The wildebeest. Muscular, wild, caught mid-stride across the African plains. It isn't just a design. It represents endurance, power, and freedom. This isn't an ornamental touch. This is a stamp of identity. And that, right there, is what makes this coin more than change. It makes it a story. Now let's talk physical details, the kind that matter to the collector's eye. This coin was struck in bronze. When new, it glowed with a reddish-golden hue. Over time, it darkened, developing a rich, aged tone. That patina is part of its charm. The diameter is just over 22 millimeters. It weighs about 4 grams. You'd feel its age in your hand, its rough edges, the texture of decades. The edge is smooth, not reeded, which was common for coins of its kind. If you ever feel a coin like this and it has grooves on the edge, it's not the 1969 2-cent millions were minted. But millions don't last. Coins are lost, melted, damaged, tossed aside. So now, over 50 years later, the number of good condition survivors is far fewer than you might think, especially those that haven't been cleaned, scratched, or corroded. That's what collectors are looking for: condition, authenticity, and originality. Let's talk condition for a second, because it matters. If you have one of these coins, pick it up. Look at it closely. Is the face of Van Riebeeck sharp and clear? Can you see lines in his hair? Are the wildebeest's legs crisp and well-defined? Or is everything smooth and faded? The better the detail, the more interest from collectors. And here's a tip: never polish or clean it. That might sound strange, but collectors value originality, even if it's dusty or dull. A cleaned coin loses its appeal and often its value. Now, not all coins are created equal. Some were struck in higher quality as proofs, made for collectors at the time, with special care and finish. These are rare and, if untouched, highly valuable. Most people never see one in person. But maybe, just maybe, you've got something special sitting quietly among old things, waiting to be rediscovered. It's also worth noting that the language on the coin comes in two versions. One reads SUID Africa, and the other reads South Africa. They were made for bilingual circulation. Some collectors seek out both versions. Some specialize in just one. But either way, the version matters. It tells you about where and how it was circulated, and sometimes it affects value. If you're the kind of man who appreciates legacy, this coin will speak to you. You grew up in a time where objects had weight, meaning, permanence. This coin is from that era. It saw moments: births, deaths, marriages, first jobs, final paychecks. It passed through hands that built railroads, farmed land, and shaped nations. And now, you hold it. So here's what you need to do. Go to your coin jar. Check your drawers. Ask your father or uncle if they kept old currency. Look for the year. 1969. Look for the design. Van Riebeeck on the front. Wildebeest on the back. And if you find one, don't rush. Examine it. Appreciate it. Because even if it's not worth a fortune, it's worth remembering. Now I know you're wondering, what's it worth? This is where it gets interesting. A circulated, common condition 1969 South Africa 2-cent coin might fetch around $1. Maybe less, maybe more, depending on how clean, detailed, and preserved it is. But, and this is important, if you have a proof version or one in pristine, untouched condition, it can fetch much more. Some collectors have paid significant premiums for near-perfect examples. In rare cases, these coins have been offered for hundreds. And in the most extreme circumstances, certain proof-quality coins in auctions and rare private collections have reached up into the thousands, though those are incredibly rare and unlikely to be found in everyday circulation. The bottom line is this: most won't make you rich, but some just might. And for those who see the value not just in dollars, but in time, history, and craftsmanship, the reward is already there. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story sparked something in you, a memory, a curiosity, or even a hunt for forgotten treasures, don't forget to subscribe. I'll be bringing more stories like this one, full of history, mystery, and value you can hold in your hand. Until next time, keep collecting, keep remembering, and keep discovering. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you never miss a journey into the world of rare coins, lost treasures, and forgotten riches. If you love history, hidden gems, and the thrill of discovery, you're in the right place. Now, let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked through an old box of coins tucked away in a drawer or an old cabinet? Maybe you've got something that once jangled in your pocket in the 70s, long forgotten. One of those coins, just a small 2-cent piece from 1976, could hold a secret that might just blow your mind. Not every old coin is valuable, of course, but sometimes, just sometimes, a coin becomes much more than just copper and numbers. Let's go back. The year is 1976. It was a different time. No internet, no smartphones, just radios, newspapers, and those long phone cords hanging from kitchen walls. You remember the vibe. The world was changing, but it still moved slower, more personal. And in South Africa, coins like the humble 2 cent were passing hand to hand, day in and day out. Maybe you used one to buy a soda. Maybe it rolled across the floorboard of your car. You didn't think much of it at the time. Why would you? It was just a coin, small, light, common. But what if I told you that very coin, sitting forgotten in a box today, might be worth a staggering amount of money? Yes, a 1976 2 cents coin. It sounds unlikely, right? But stay with me, because this story gets better. Now, let's talk about the coin itself. The 2 cents coin from South Africa in 1976 was made of bronze. It wasn't made from silver or gold, nothing flashy. It was a working man's coin, meant to be spent, not saved. On the front of the coin was a portrait of a man who represented that era. On the back, a wildebeest, powerful, steady, charging forward. A perfect symbol for a country pushing through challenging times. This wasn't a rare coin when it was made. Millions were struck. That's what makes its current story so fascinating. Sometimes it's not about how many were made, but how many survived in pristine condition, untouched, uncirculated, preserved like a time capsule. That's where value begins to appear. Now picture this. A man in his 60s is cleaning out his garage. He finds a little wooden box filled with old coins he saved from his younger days. Most are worn out, scratched, barely readable. But one of them stands out, shiny, crisp, almost like it was just minted. It's a 1976 2-cent coin. He looks at it, feels that old rush of memory, and something tells him to hang on to it. Maybe even get it looked at. Here's the part that surprises most people. A coin's value isn't just about age. It's about condition, rarity, and something we call historical context. This coin comes from a very specific time in South Africa's history. Political shifts, economic changes, social tension, it was all brewing in the mid-70s. So a coin from that era carries a certain weight, not just in metal, but in meaning. And collectors, especially older ones, know the value of meaning. But let's get practical. Most 1976 2-cent coins are not worth a fortune. If you've got one that's scratched, tarnished, or heavily circulated, it might be worth a few bucks to the right buyer. It's a nice keepsake, maybe even a conversation starter. But if, and this is a big if, you've got one that's in immaculate condition, untouched, perfect edges, no blemishes, you might be holding something extraordinary. Even better, there are rumors of rare minting errors, test strikes, or limited edition versions of this coin that were never released into general circulation. These are the types of coins that go to auction houses, get placed in velvet-lined cases, and find themselves in the hands of elite collectors. It's not always about the coin itself. It's the story, the journey, the condition, and the context. Imagine a collector in his 60s who remembers that time period vividly, sees that coin, and feels that rush of connection. For him, it's not just a piece of metal. It's a piece of himself, of his history. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Come on, it's just an old coin. Surely nothing like that is worth more than a few dollars. But here's the part you've been waiting for. One particular version of the 1976 South African 2-cent coin, in flawless condition, graded by a professional, and verified to be part of a limited or error run, has been valued at up to $67,000. Yes, you heard that right. $67,000. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? A coin you once used to buy candy or pay for a paper could now be worth more than most cars on the road. But that's the strange, wonderful world of coin collecting. Sometimes what looks like junk turns out to be a jackpot. So the next time you're digging through an old drawer, or visiting a flea market, or maybe you find a dusty coin jar in your dad's old workshop, don't pass it by. Take a closer look, especially if you see that wildebeest on the back and the year 1976 stamped on it. You just might be holding something far more valuable than you ever imagined. And that's why we make these videos, to remind you that hidden gems aren't always found in treasure chests. Sometimes, they're right there in your own home, waiting to be rediscovered. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and if you think you've got one of these coins, let us know in the comments. Who knows? Your story might be our next episode. Until next time, keep searching, keep collecting, and never underestimate the value of what's right in front of you.